Yeah, but I'm looking at all these other games. There's really nothing going on this weekend in football. And I'll tell you the reason why
College.
all of these NFL games may not be big. And I think the biggest game is the one I think I mentioned between the Vikings going to Green Bay and taking on Green Bay. But the biggest football game, in my opinion, has to be Georgia and Alabama.
Bam.
That's college football. That's the
Yep.
biggest football game, college or pro, this week. It's that
Right.
much at stake this early.
Are you surprised Georgia's favored going to Bama?
I am. I am surprised now hearing
I
people
was a
saying,
bit
"How are you
surprised when I
surprised
saw that
Georgia
too.
is a favorite against Bama?" Well, Bama is not. This is not one of those. This is the better team kind of scenarios. This is going to go down to a lot, or come down to a lot of the elements. Whether it's the coaching, Kirby Smart has been there. Kalen DeBoer hasn't necessarily been there, but he was the runner-up last year for Washington. But coaching mind-wise and what his influence on this team is going to be or has been is going to play a role too. And that home field advantage does matter. But guess what? It didn't matter when it was Texas last season. And Nick Saban was there. Now, we don't know what Kalen DeBoer on the large stage is going to turn out to be long term. We're not going to say he could be the next Saban until he ends up showing us he could be the next Saban in terms of his success. But this could be the first salvo of showing that he belongs. I believe he belongs anyway. That's why that was the first guy I thought of when Nick Saban retired. I'm thinking that Alabama should win this game. And when you look at a 2-point line, I think it came down from 2.5. I
Right.
think you kind of understand that, okay, they're putting it out there that Alabama's probably has a very good chance to win, but then it comes down to the money. You want that money to come in and bet Alabama against Georgia. That's why it went from 2.5 now 2 right now. Georgia has other issues. Georgia, man, I always stick with the Jacksonville guys. I've watched these guys play since high school. I've seen, I try to keep up with all of the plays that come out of Jacksonville, regardless of where they go in the country. It just happens to be many of them stay in the SEC, so it's easy to watch them from here. Carson Beck, man, I'm still not sold on him. I don't know if you're sold on him, but I have not been sold on him since he's gotten the starting job last year, and all the hype going into this season being a Heisman Trophy candidate only because you're playing for the number one team, at least at that time, going into the season. In terms of his overall play, it just hasn't lived up to it. He had not made anyone forget about Stetson Bennett. And I'm not even talking about the championships. The way Stetson Bennett played, he hasn't shown any of that. And to add more insult to injury, Georgia's coming into this game a little bit banged up. They have Tate Ratledge. He hurt himself. Their offensive lineman is a guard. He hurt himself against Kentucky in the last game. So he's out, and he will be out for a couple of weeks. I think it was an ankle and an MCL. They're bringing in Michael Ross. He's a 6'4", 330-pound offensive lineman. The reason why it's, well, for people here to know, he's from Georgia, Kingsland, right up there, right over the border from Jacksonville. So he played for Camden County, he played for. But in any event, he's coming in. He has had 13 starts last season out of 14 games. So he is not unfamiliar to step in and be that force they need in order to solidify that line. But going into the season, they only had 4 returning not only, but they did have 4 returning offensive linemen. Now, essentially 3, but an experienced one stepping in as Micah Morris comes in and tries to fill the gap. I'm still thinking Alabama is going to be able to do it.
So when I saw the line, my first thought was they don't have much confidence in DeBoer. That was my initial thought. So you alluded to it. This is an opportunity for him to put his stamp on the program. But if he's not up to the task, what's going to happen? Like if Georgia goes in there and just pounds them, I don't see that happening. But the book is out on him. We still have to see what he can do there at Bama. And I think it's imperative that they defend the home field. You can't allow your rival to come in there and push you around. And man, I sound like the dude from Rudy now. You can't, can't come in there, dominate, punch you in the mouth, or however you want to describe it. You can't allow that to happen. Bama has to handle their business Saturday.
Yeah, and I think they will. And going back to DeBoer being the offensive mind he didn't get the respect coming from an NAIA school, going to Washington, and in just a few years getting them to the national championship game, even though they lost as a runner-up. And then you think about what he has done with individual players as a quarterback. He's brought in Michael Penix, who wasn't anything special at Indiana. He made this guy essentially in his system and his tutelage a first-round draft pick in the early first round when people probably thought he might have been a late first rounder or second rounder, still based on what he did with Washington and DeBoer as his coach. Now, I think in Alabama, his offensive mind is a lot of the same. Remember, Nick Saban was a defensive coach. He was like the CEO. He hired people to do what they should do. I'm going to hire an offensive coordinator, whether it was Lane Kiffin, whether it was Steve Sarkisian. He hired these offensive coaches to do their job. He didn't say much to them. He trusted them to do their job. He was the defensive guy. I think Alabama has all of the ability to score a lot more now because of DeBoer, and let DeBoer hire defensive coordinators to do their job. They can just take care of the losers on defense, which automatically are there because they recruit like that, whether the transfer portal or their five-star recruits, they're still there. Now, offensively, can they put it up? What has Georgia done to Alabama even last season when they essentially had a home game in Atlanta? They lost with Carson Beck. You have a rematch of both quarterbacks now, and now we're going to get a chance to see it in Tuscaloosa. I'm thinking Alabama's going to be able to pull it off. I mean, trust me, I prefer Georgia because between the two, if I had to pick a team I like, it's Georgia. It's not that I hate Alabama. I just like Georgia. But as it turns out, I think that Alabama's going to pull it off. 2 points if you're betting. Well, I'm giving 4 teams away in a matter of minutes anyway, so I'll throw those 2 teams out there, letting you know that I'm going with Alabama on this one. +2 Alabama in Tuscaloosa, not a hard sell.